Okay. Hey, this is Carl Wagner from Beat Cancer, and I have a special guest, Mark Simon, on with me today. And please, if you're new to the channel, like and subscribe. It helps us with getting found and hearing great, valuable information from people like Mark.
Hello, and welcome to the Beat Cancer Answer, brought to you by BeatCancer.Org, the Center for Advancement in Cancer Education. We believe that 90% of all cancers could be eliminated through environmental and lifestyle choices alone, and science agrees. Unfortunately, most people don't know it. So we provide the education that can help you prevent, cope with, and beat cancer through diet, lifestyle, and other immune-boosting approaches. In every video, we will feature an expert who can teach us how to become part of that 90% who could prevent getting diagnosed with cancer. But if you already have cancer, we have empowering information for you too. Over the past 40+ years, our nonprofit counseling service has helped thousands of cancer patients get back into the driver's seat when it comes to their personal journey of healing cancer and preventing future recurrence. If we helped you learn just one thing today about how to prevent, cope with, or beat cancer, then we have succeeded in our mission. Please remember to like, subscribe, and comment. We appreciate all of your feedback and love your suggestions. Your positive ratings help us to get discovered so we can help save more lives. Thank you again for joining us, and best wishes for good health from all of us at BeatCancer.Org.
So Mark Simon is the founder and director of NORI. It's a Nutritional Oncology Research Institute. That's a mouthful. And it was established in 2011. And I'm going to just let Mark talk about himself. So welcome, Mark. Please tell us a little bit about you and NORI.
Hi, Carl. Thank you. Yeah. So it's quite a long story, but I'll try to keep it really brief. So I started NORI in 2011, and it was based on a couple things that came up in my research prior. And one of the things I discovered through my research is that there's a certain form of selenium. It's called sodium selenite. And there's a massive amount of studies on this, and it is actually a very, very powerful anti-cancer agent that can be used, therapeutically. And I was really intrigued by all the research, and even today, there's still ongoing studies. There's some human clinical studies on sodium selenite. So that was one thing that really stuck with me, from way back, from like 2006 or something. And the other part of all this is that I have a background in clinical nutrition and plant-based nutrition, and I have a certain understanding of the relationship between diet and cancer. But I discovered some research right around, it was published like around 2001 by Dr. Daniel Epner. And his research was centered around a methionine restricted diet. And so methionine is an amino acid, very, very abundant in animal products, less available in plant foods. And so this is kind of the core where it all started, is my interest in these two different things and basically putting them together, like a methionine restricted diet and sodium selenite kind of as a core idea, in cancer treatment, natural non-toxic cancer treatment. And then it grew out from there. So I developed a treatment protocol, based on this type of a dietary approach. And sodium selenite is the key. I call it a nutraceutical as opposed to a supplement, because it's not really fixing a nutritional deficiency. It works as a pro-oxidant, an actual agent that triggers apoptosis. So everything else in this NORI protocol is built around, that core. So there's other nutraceuticals that are combined, synergistically with sodium selenite. There's some further refinement of the diet. There's basically a method where you synchronize the diet and the nutraceuticals together for maximum benefit. I'll get into more details on that in a little bit. But basically, I was very excited when I made these discoveries through my research and thought, gee, sodium selenite's like an absolutely perfect agent, for cancer treatment, because it's a small molecule, it's 100% water soluble, it is a readily available nutritional supplement. You can go to the health food store and get sodium selenite supplements, although the dosage is very, very low. So there's some issues on how to dose it and how to administer it. You can't just go to the health food store and buy sodium selenite. It's going to come in the wrong form, packaged too low of a dosage. So I developed a tablet. It's a sublingual, dissolves under the tongue, and is able to get the sodium selenite into the bloodstream pretty efficiently. And started using that, and also sodium selenite liquid. And then recently I developed another tablet that's a little easier to administer. It's a slow release tablet. You just essentially swallow it and it releases sodium selenite slowly into the system. There's one little catch with sodium selenite, and that's that it can trigger nausea if too much of it gets into the stomach too quickly. So that's always been a little bit of a challenge, but been able to work around that. The dosages that it's used at, it's non-toxic, no adverse side effects, perfectly safe. Dosage therapeutically is in the 10 to 30 milligram range, per day. I've worked with a number of different doctors developing techniques to administer sodium selenite intravenously, which is very, very powerful. It's fairly easy to do. It's far more effective than intravenous vitamin C. This has been one of my missions, is to try to get doctors who are doing intravenous vitamin C to take a look seriously at intravenous sodium selenite.
Right.
It works, and it works very, very well. And you can couple it with other oxidative therapies, like intravenous ozone or hydrogen peroxide. Very, very powerful. It's probably the most powerful clinical treatment or alternative clinical treatment that I know of. So it's still ongoing, convincing and training doctors on using sodium selenite IV. So there's a lot of research going on in Sweden with selenite intravenous treatment for cancer. There's some interesting published studies on this. I myself have seen very, very good results.
And you're getting clinical research papers from these other countries like Sweden.
Yeah, there's published papers on sodium selenite.
Yeah, that's great.
So it's a universal chemo, or let's call it a selective chemotherapeutic agent, not a drug. It'll never become a drug because it's non-patentable. And
right.
I always saw that as a reason or a roadblock why it's never going to be developed.
Exactly.
Clinically, there's 40 years of research behind sodium selenite, more than 40 years. So, one thing that's really interesting about it is that, like in the 60s, a radioactive form of sodium selenite was used for imaging brain tumors. So there's this sort of naturally high uptake of sodium selenite into tumor tissue,
Mm.
which is
Like
nice.
just like sugar.
Yeah. So there's lots and lots of reasons why this is a very, very good, ideal agent. But what I've done is combined it with other agents to basically help boost up its efficacy. Other pro-oxidants, redox recycling agents. So my basic approach to cancer treatment, I come from a nutrition viewpoint or standpoint, but it really isn't. It's more anti-nutritional. I do not recommend most supplements for cancer therapy. I actually take patients off of pretty much all like multivitamins, B vitamins, B12, a lot of these supplements can actually be drivers of faster tumor growth. There's some good evidence for that. So I'm very, very careful with supplementation. I normally don't go further than like vitamin D3. So the approach is not really nutritional, it's more anti-nutritional. And I say that because we're actually trying to limit the availability of a nutrient, methionine, right, in the diet. We don't want antioxidants. Antioxidants will interfere with most treatments, whether it's chemotherapy or, oxidative treatments of other forms. So this kind of comes from an understanding that, you can dump all this nutrition into the body and it's not going to do anything, and it may actually have a negative impact on cancer treatment because certain nutrients like antioxidants can help support the survival of cancer cells. And then there's other nutrients that support, this fast reproduction of cancer cells, or, faster rates of proliferation. So I'm not a believer that, you throw a bunch of vitamins and minerals and do juicing and throw all this nutrition into the system, and that's going to take care of the problem. I also come from understanding that cancer does what it does regardless of the immune system. You can have the most healthiest, robust immune system there is on the planet, and these cancer cells do a really, really good job of hiding from and evading the immune system. That's one of the hallmarks of cancer, is immune evasion. So I think one way to state this from my point of view is that there is no internal mechanism in our body to fight cancer. We don't have any defense against it, actually. The only defense might be the immune system. But as we know, cancer cells are very, very robust in terms of immune evasion. There's all kinds of things going on there. They've discovered certain proteins that are expressed on cancer cells. There's like CD47, they call it the don't eat me signal. There's all kinds of other things going on. Many things that protect these cancer cells from destruction by our immune system. And I think that's just part of the nature of how our body works and how our cells, whether they're cancerous cells or normal cells, are essentially protected from immune system damage or destruction. Our normal cells express all kinds of different signals that tell the immune system, you know, I'm self, I'm not foreign. And cancer cells do the same thing, and they even do it to a higher level. The cancer cell is self, not foreign. There's nothing there on the cancer cell that would even tell the immune system, you know, destroy me, right?
Right.
So, so the Nori approach really is to try to starve cancer cells of a few essential nutrients. I've studied for a long time methods to basically try to starve cancer cells of like glucose, glutamine, fatty acids, you know, certain metabolic substrates, you know, to try to lower the energy in the cancer cell. These approaches have all failed. There aren't really any good, strong approaches that can actually shut down the cancer cell's metabolism, you know, in a safe, non-toxic way, not affecting normal cells, and you know, starve cancer cells of glucose or glutamine, or, you know, really the combination of both. You can't do one or the other, which, you know, gave me the understanding that this whole ketogenic diet approach simply doesn't work. Even if you could cut off glucose metabolism, the cancer cell metabolizes lots of glutamine, and
Right.
glutamine is readily available. It's always there in the bloodstream. So the approach is more of a backdoor approach of starving the cancer cells of building blocks. So methionine is one of those amino acids that cannot be synthesized from other amino acids. It's been known for a really, really long time, maybe 20, 30 years, that cancer cells are highly dependent on methionine. And if you deprive them of methionine, they die. They can't replicate, they can't make new cancer cells. So that's the dietary approach that I latched onto quite a while ago. Now, we can't, through the diet, we can't bring methionine down to 0. We can bring down to a really low level just by balancing the diet a certain way, selecting certain foods. And that has an effect of slowing down cancer progression. If we could bring methionine down to 0, and there are some methods that have been looked at for doing that, then diet alone becomes a very, very powerful standalone treatment approach. But the science is not there yet. So basically, methionine restricted diet is just a tool, platform to work from, and it probably does two things. It probably slows down tumor growth substantially. It also probably makes cancer cells more sensitive to treatment, whatever treatment it is that you're doing.
Right.
And it probably does that by reducing glutathione, you know, antioxidant systems, other than glutathione also, maybe. So that's the diet. It's plant-based, low fat, low methionine. It's cycled on and off. You know, it's an alkaline diet. Alkalinity is really, really important. I've really began to understand that this, you know, you can't change the blood. The blood is what it is, 7.4. You can't change the pH inside the cell. That's pretty well regulated at 7.2. But the extracellular fluid compartment, everything that our cells is bathing in, the pH of that can vary all over the place. So an alkaline diet is very helpful because it helps neutralize the acidity within and around the tumor. And there's many benefits to that. That's a long, complex discussion.
Right,
But
right.
the combination of an alkaline diet and also using potassium bicarbonate, sodium bicarbonate, other alkaline elements is helpful. That's part of the NORI protocol. Test urine pH, every morning, try to keep it up at 8.0. That's an important piece,
Right.
of the protocol. And of course, a plant-based diet, is going to tend to be more anti-inflammatory. We end up with better gut health, a healthier gut microbiome, and all these great things, probably suppressed angiogenesis. So it's a really, really nearly optimal diet to work from. And I will say that I've seen in really early stage cancers, I've seen this sort of dietary approach cause some tumor regression. But for most cancers, I've never rely on diet alone.
Right, right. What's your thoughts about lycopene?
Lycopene?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I've looked at it. It's a compound that has been well studied, and it does show anti-cancer activity. The problem with most of these compounds or agents is low bioavailability. Trying to get any of these things up to a therapeutic threshold, in the bloodstream is very, very challenging. I've looked at many, many different compounds, and basically what I do is I single them out based on a set of criteria. So we want really high bioavailability, meaning you take it orally, and it's going to get into the bloodstream efficiently and get up to a therapeutic level. So sodium selenite's perfect in that regard, and its effectiveness occurs at fairly low concentrations, like 2.5 micromolar. So you can reach that very easy. So it has really good pharmacological properties. You want a good long half-life. So sodium selenite's got somewhere between 9 to 18 hours half-life. Yeah. So for most things to work, you need sort of this constant exposure for at least 48 hours. One of the reasons why this high dose intravenous vitamin C doesn't work.
It's gone in a couple hours.
It's in and out. It's in and it's out in an hour.
Right.
So, and the concentration required for vitamin C to do anything at all is like 10,000 times that of sodium selenite.
Right.
So as I said, sodium selenite's effective, at a couple of micromolar concentration, where ascorbic acid, you need to be up like 20 millimolar concentration. So it's like 10,000 times more. That's why you have to infuse 75 to 100 grams of vitamin C intravenously. And with sodium selenite, you're talking, 20 milligrams or less. And it has a sustained, half-life.
Right.
And then you can use it orally also. So in selecting out, there's tens of thousands of different compounds out there that have anti-cancer activity. You can just, the list is endless, and all the bioflavonoids and all these different things. But so the compound needs to be readily bioavailable, either fat soluble or water soluble. Like 99.9% of these compounds out there that have been studied are neither fat nor water soluble. They might be soluble like in DMSO, but trying to get those into the bloodstream and to distribute, into the tissues and get to tumors is very, very challenging. And you have to get into some exotic methods like creating nanoparticles and things like that.
Hold on just one
Okay.
second. My son just
Sure.
came home. Sorry about that.
Oh, that's okay. All right. So you know, I do a lot of studying and research on how to select out, you know, the most promising agents. There's plenty of things out there. They look really, really good in cell culture. They may even look okay in some of the animal studies, but they don't work so well, you know, in the human being.
I've seen your research that you put out on your website and have sent to me. It's intense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I
I
have a
mean,
scientific background. I look deeply into all these things. You know, I'm not one of those who tell you, you know, to drink, you know, to juice, say 5 pounds of carrots every day.
right, right.
Drink carrot juice and hope that that's going to solve the problem. I don't believe that it can or will. Yeah, there is a compound in carrots, valcarinol. There's about 2 milligrams per kilogram of it in carrots. You know, it may vary a lot, you know, from one carrot to another. But what's the bioavailability of that compound?
Right.
What's its half-life? What's its distribution? And, you know, I've studied a lot of pharmacology, and that's really key to all this. What's the absorption? It's called ADME. What's the absorption, distribution, metabolism, and excretion? You know, you have to understand, you know, put something in, where's it going to go? What's it going to do? How long is it going to stay in the system? So that's probably the key criteria for selecting these various agents. So I tend to focus on things that, you know, show really, really good results in cell culture experiments, you know, at fairly low concentrations that we could achieve orally. And they've got good bioavailability, you know, above 10%, not like below 1%. You know, water, fat soluble, low toxicity, you know, a high index of effectiveness, meaning there's a window, they call it it's a window where you can work with it in this range where, yeah, it's going to affect cancer cells, but not going to affect normal cells. Because most of these things, you know, really high doses, they can become toxic.
Yeah.
But there is this this window you can work in and use these things safely. Like sodium selenite, yeah, it can become toxic at much higher dosages. It can become lethal, you know, at very high dosages. But if you work with it carefully and stay within a certain range, you know, it's perfectly safe. So sodium selenite's the key agent. Other agents that I work with are molecular iodine. There's lots of good research on this, and there's actually human clinical studies on molecular iodine with breast cancer. It's a form of iodine. It's I2. It's just 2 iodine molecules. It's not ionic iodine, which doesn't do much. It doesn't work. We need the molecular form of iodine, and it can kill breast cancer cells and prostate cancer cells and lung cancer cells and plenty of other types of cell, you know, cancerous cell lines. It's a pro-oxidant, just like sodium selenite. Its mechanism is the same. It creates oxidative stress. It causes the generation of peroxide and hydrogen peroxide It targets the mitochondria, triggers apoptosis. Another agent I've been working with recently is a form of vitamin E. It's called delta tocotrienol. It has a little bit of antioxidant property to it, but it's mainly a pro-oxidant. So when it gets into the cell, it causes generation of more oxidative molecules.
And that one might be fat soluble then?
It is fat soluble. Yeah, it
Yeah.
ends up in, as a fat soluble molecule. It ends up in the mitochondrial membrane. And once there, when it interacts with the oxidation that's there, it kind of creates this sort of, they call it a lipid peroxidation chain reaction. So there's very good studies on tocotrienols as anti-cancer agents, and they're, they've got good bioavailability, low toxicity. There's some really good studies on pancreatic cancer and the delta tocotrienol form. So there's 8 forms of vitamin E. Of tocopherol forms, those are all just purely antioxidants, and those will interfere with any kind of oxidative therapy. You have to use pure tocotrienol form. So some really extraordinary studies on that. I'm looking at another.
These forms that you're talking about, you just can't get these in the department store.
They're pretty. The tocotrienol form, the pure tocotrienol form, comes from the annatto seed, and it's pretty readily available. I offer it on my website. It's available on Amazon. You'll find it from quite a few different companies, but it all comes from the same manufacturer here in the United States that extracts the vitamin E from the annatto seed, and it's pure tocotrienol. There's no tocopherol in there at all, or very an undetectable amount. So you need to use that form. I'm looking at another compound right now called PQQ, pyrroloquinoline-quinone, PQQ. So it's used as a supplement for mitochondrial regeneration, but at higher dosages, the normal supplemental dose would be 20 milligrams, but when you get up to 200 milligrams or higher, it kills cancer cells. And it does it through an oxidative mechanism, PQQ. So it's a quinone molecule, and quinones are interesting because they behave both as an antioxidant and a pro-oxidant at the same time. So they get into these systems and they do something called redox recycling. So if there's oxidative stress, it elevates that level and sustains it for a really long time. So there's a whole bunch of different quinones that all have anti-cancer activity. And one of them is
coenzyme Q10. Is that a quinone?
No.
No, okay, I'm mistaken.
No. So vitamin K3, which I've been using for a long time, also that's also a quinone, and it's also a redox recycling agent. So see, all these things kind of come together, and it's all about generating excess oxidative stress.
Now the K3 goes well with the D. Is that something you see together?
No.
Okay.
So when you look at cancer cells versus normal cells, what is the key vulnerability? What is the key difference between these cells? What are the cancer cells really sensitive to that normal cells are not?
Go ahead and give
So
us
the answer to that is oxidative stress. So it's really well known and widely accepted that cancer cells are operating at this very high level of oxidative stress. And that's because of their dysfunctional mitochondria, and altered metabolism. They're struggling, right? So there's really high level, maybe level 8, level 9, where the normal cell might be at level 1 or 2. So it's this Achilles heel, really. It's something to take advantage of. And most of the chemotherapy drugs work and kill cancer cells because they do generate an excess of oxidative stress. Like doxorubicin is a pro-oxidant that's well known, and many of the other chemo drugs, they elevate oxidative stress in the cancer cell, and that triggers apoptosis.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry, that's my older one came home.
No, that's okay. So what's the most universal and safest way to kill cancer cells? It's elevation of oxidative stress, is to use pro-oxidants. And there's a paper, really good paper written by Jim Watson. So he runs a big cancer research center. And Jim Watson is, the famous Jim Watson that discovered the structure of DNA. But he's a very, very smart guy.
Okay.
And so he wrote this paper. It's published like in 2013, and he talks about all this. He talks about antioxidants and oxidative stress. Says, everything else in cancer research is a blind alley, all these other approaches. And the best, most guaranteed way to find success in developing effective, safe, non-toxic cancer treatments is to go down the road of pro-oxidants.
It seems so opposite from what I'm used to hearing about antioxidants being so healthy for you. And
well, they are.
Yeah.
We need well, and also like anything else, there's a balance. You don't want too much of this or too much of that. There's a certain amount of pro-oxidation that's healthy, and there's there can be too much antioxidation that can be a problem too. So it's a balance. Pro-oxidation is a mechanism used basically to kill pathogens. So we want that and need that. Same thing like inflammation. You need a certain amount of inflammation in the system, balance. Stay alive and stay healthy. You don't want to quench it all the way to nothing, and you don't want it at the other extreme. But with cancer, if you can bring up oxidative stress a little bit, you're going to have a very detrimental effect on cancer cells and no effect on normal cells, because they're operating at a fairly low level and they have good intact antioxidant systems. You don't need to worry about them. So the NORI protocol, as far as the nutraceuticals, and I call them nutraceuticals as opposed to supplements. Supplements are just things to correct nutritional deficiencies. Nutraceuticals are functional.
Right. And you're using them at a therapeutic dose. Yeah. They
have a specific function and mechanism. So this is what it's all about, is grouping together these pro-oxidant compounds. And then there's some things that kind of work with it and support it, work around it. Like glucosamine is a real interesting one. Melatonin, high-dose melatonin at about 300 milligrams. High-dose zinc. So you can kind of build upon that with some other compounds, and have a pretty effective way to kill cancer cells, which is to treat cancer. That's the key. That's what you have to do. You don't, if you don't kill off the cells, they're just going to sit there and they're going to replicate and create more and more and more cells and more tumor.
Yep.
So,
And it seems the difference to me, what I'm hearing from traditional chemotherapy, it seems that chemotherapy kills everything.
chemotherapy, for the most part, yeah, is non-selective.
Right.
But the exciting thing is that there are all these natural compounds out there that are selective. They basically take advantage of this fact that the cancer cell is operating at this high level of oxidative stress. The mitochondria are very, very vulnerable. And targeting the mitochondria is key, because mitochondria controls apoptosis. So if you throw the balance off enough and affect the mitochondria enough, in other words, we know that mitochondria are dysfunctional and damaged in cancer cells. So it's really a matter of creating further damage to the mitochondria. Damage them further, they release the signals that trigger apoptosis. It's all, apoptosis is controlled by the mitochondria, not the nucleus of the cell. All right, so cancer has nothing to do with gene mutations. You know, in the nucleus, you'll find cancer cells that have no mutations at all. You'll find all kinds of various mutations, you know, in the nuclear genome. But what you do find consistently in cancer are certain sets of mutations in the mitochondrial genome. So remember, we have two genomes. We have the nuclear, you know, the DNA, the chromosomes and all that. But we also have the mitochondrial DNA. Our cells are a hybrid, right? We have cells within our cells. So the cells within our cells are the mitochondria. They have their own DNA. It's not a lot. It encodes like 37 different genes. It's not huge, but they're all related to metabolism, because it's the mitochondria that generate the bulk of the energy, you know, the ATP inside our cells.
Right, right.
And so in cancer, you'll see consistent patterns of mitochondrial DNA mutations or damage. And that's why the cell kind of reverts back towards glycolysis, you know, consuming more glucose, because this whole oxidative phosphorylation process, you know, is crippled. So the cell cannot generate ATP or energy very well or at all through normal processes in the mitochondria. So that's it. It's the marriage of this diet, which does its things. And what I didn't mention before is growth factors. So in treating cancer, you really need to do two things. You need to dial down all the growth factors you can, whatever they are. You know, IGF-1, insulin, you know, and hormonally sensitive cancers, you got to take care of, you know, the estrogen, testosterone, and prostate cancer.
All the things I heard in my old workout days and
all these
training
things.
days that they want to have.
Right. Yeah. So you want to dial down all these growth factors so you can slow things down, you know, slow down the train. And then you start hitting these cells with these pro-oxidants and killing them off, bringing down the numbers. So there's a form of cancer I have like over a 99% success rate with, and that's thyroid cancer. And there's probably a couple of reasons why this program is so successful. But one of them is it's a really slow progressing cancer. So you can just keep on, you know, hitting it and hitting it and hitting it with these pro-oxidants, and, you know, the tumors shrink, the cancer cells die off and just don't come back and replicate very rapidly. It's a very slow progressing type form. And so, stage 1 through 4, metastatic papillary thyroid cancer. I had a recent patient, all better, 2 months.
Yeah.
Evidenced, by the marker, and others. I have a long-term patient who works with me. Treated her about 8 years ago, stage 4 thyroid cancer. Had all kinds of surgery and radiation treatment and everything. It's all failing. She got on the NORI program, and it was the beginning, and she's fine.
All of a sudden, spontaneous remission, right?
She's fine. Wasn't a spontaneous remission.
No, I mean, they're doctors. That's typically what they'll call it.
She went on.
They can't
she went on the diet. Yeah, she went on the right. Yeah, she, went on the diet. Ate a lot of pineapple. By the way, I didn't bring that up either. The diet is a lot of fruit.
Mm.
Okay, fruit is not the same thing as sugar.
Right.
And I'd say that fruits probably are the best foods to consume when you're fighting cancer. Very low methionine, a lot of enzymes, especially pineapple, papaya, very, very helpful. They're very anti-inflammatory. They're very, very healthy foods, loaded, minerals, alkaline. It's the perfect food. So the diet is fairly high in fruit. Some vegetables, if a patient is underweight, I tell them don't eat vegetables, not a lot, because there's no calories there. We need to focus on carbohydrates. We need energy. So fruits, potatoes, sometimes some rice. Rice is sort of a high methionine food, but in patients that are underweight, we need to bring their weight back up. And that's worked pretty well for a lot of underweight cancer patients. Fruit, potatoes, rice.
Not ice cream.
No,
Not
no
all
fat.
All the things that
we
come
don't want
from their doctors.
Yeah, we keep the fat intake. So the other key to this is keeping fat intake to a minimum, because it's excess dietary fat that causes insulin resistance, which causes, these blood sugar imbalances, essentially type 2 diabetes. So I've been working with a few clients recently who came to me not as cancer patients, but as people with type 2 diabetes and vegetarian. And look at their diet and said, well, you 30 to 40% of your calories, are coming from fat, oils, eggs, dairy, whatever, nuts, seeds. And I bring their fat intake down, like below 10% of calories. And the type 2 diabetes clears up very, very quickly, like within days. So an excess of fat is a big problem.
And it's not discriminate between what types of fat.
No.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, saturated animal fats, they're pretty bad already, for a lot of different reasons. But even so-called, I'm not a believer in good fats, or healthy fats. I think we have to be very, very cautious about consuming an excess of fat of any type. And the problem exists because fat metabolizes very, very slowly in our cells. And so it builds up, just kind of gradually builds up sort of this toxic level. And it ends up blocking the signal from the insulin receptor that makes its way to the glucose transporter. So the glucose can't, enter into our cells. This happens mainly in muscle cells. There's a really good video on this by Dr. Michael Greger. It's on my website. A really well done video, and he discusses all this and shows what's happening, graphically. So that's a really important concept to understand. And diabetes and cancer do go hand in hand.
Yeah.
Not
Comorbidity.
that, not that one causes the other. It's just that if one is in a diabetic condition, you're going to see higher insulin, and insulin is a big tumor growth promoter. You know, talks to the IGF-1 pathway. So IGF-1 is a big tumor growth promoter, right? And you're going to have high IGF-1 levels if you're eating animal products. That's why taking animal products out of the diet will help slow down cancer. Reducing the amount of methionine in the diet helps slow down cancer. There's actually a sensor inside the cell that can look at, you know, methionine level. High methionine level means the cell can regenerate faster, synthesize proteins faster, make new cancer cells faster. Interesting research on low methionine and anti-aging. It stands out as the key nutrient for anti-aging is to keep methionine to the lowest possible level. It basically slows the clock. It slows down the rate of turnover of our cells. And it does a lot of other good things. The lower the methionine, the lower the amount of homocysteine, and you'll see other inflammatory markers go way, way down on a low methionine diet, which by default is a low protein diet, but not that low in protein, because all different proteins have different amino acid profiles. So you want to choose the foods that have the amino acid profiles that are low, you know, in methionine and cysteine, you know, the sulfur-containing amino acids, and a few of the other amino acids. So we know that cancer cells, yeah, they love methionine, they love leucine, isoleucine, you know, the branch chain amino acids, phenylalanine. What are the other ones? Probably tryptophan. So there's a few amino acids that are really important for cancer cell growth and replication, but they're not essential to normal cells. So the truth is we don't need a whole lot of protein. Protein is way, way overblown and oversold and hyped up. I always recommend to never ever take protein powders. Not good for you, not healthy. Just eat regular whole food. And don't worry about protein, not getting enough. There's no such thing. If you're getting enough calories, you're not going to become protein deficient.
What would be the sources of protein you would suggest?
Just whole plant foods.
Just plant food protein.
Yeah, it's not necessary to eat these concentrated proteins. It's certainly not necessary to eat animal products. I can attest to that. I've been on a plant-based diet for 39 years. And I tried not to eat an excess of protein. The more protein you put into the system, the faster you're going to age, the more stress you put on your liver and kidneys. And protein in excess becomes toxic. In different way, in different levels. Within the intestinal tract, within the bloodstream, within your organs. You do not want to create excesses of protein, which would lead to an excess of uric acid, ammonia, and all kinds of other toxic things. Protein in an excess is toxic. We don't need a lot of protein. We don't utilize protein anyway. We have to digest it. We've got to break it down into amino acids. So we have this huge amino acid pool in our body that just recycles and circulates around. We lose some amino acids because they're assembled together to make up proteins, you know, for our nails, our skin, our hair. But if we're not growing, we're not an adult. We're an adult, we're not a child. We're not going through growth. We don't need that much for maintenance, maybe maybe 10 to 20 grams of protein. So it's less is more. And so in cancer, if one's dealing with cancer, take the focus off of protein completely. Don't worry about it. Just get enough calories. And you don't want calories that are going to spike up your blood sugar. So you don't want to be eating, garbage, table sugar, but fruits, vegetables,
Right.
whole grains, nuts, seeds, and beans, as a plant-based diet. But as a low methionine diet, it can be like 70 to 80% fruit. It's like an 80-10-10 diet, Dr. Doug Graham. And a lesser amount of fat and protein. So like a really low methionine diet, the lowest methionine diet would be like all fruit. Apples are really, really low. And some other fruits you'll see, are a few milligrams of methionine, per 100-gram portion. I have a really good chart that shows, the exact methionine level in different foods. So fruits are the lowest, and then you've got certain vegetables, that are a little higher, and then soy is like really high. Sesame seeds, Brazil nuts are like really high in methionine. Very, very high. So you need to look at these charts, and see generally, where it is, and specifically in certain foods that run really, really high, you need to know to avoid those. So you can put together this low methionine diet. Basically, it's centered around fruit, and keep the methionine level at this low range, which will have this impact, on the rate at which these cancer cells are able to replicate. Someday, we figure it out. We'll figure out how to, probably be a combination of diet and certain tricks to bring that methionine down to 0. And then it would replicate these experiments that have been done, like on animals. There are actual studies done where animals, are implanted with tumors, and they put them on a 0 methionine diet, and the tumors shrink, they regress. So without methionine, cancer cells cannot grow, replicate, and divide. But bringing methionine down reduces the sort of growth stimulation that a high methionine diet would produce. So methionine is very, very high in chicken and fish. So you'll see these people, oh, okay, I don't eat beef anymore. Beef's a little lower, but then they'll throw all this chicken and fish into their diet. Not good, not healthy.
Yeah, amazing. I learned a lot today.
We're just scratching the surface here. There's a lot of knowledge in this brain of mine, and I'm working on some books, and I don't know if they'll ever get completed because they're just keep on accumulating more knowledge and experience as I go. But hopefully in the next year or two, I'll get one of these 3 books out.
Right. And did you get any response from our coaches for, I don't know, were you advertising keynotes or anything for our coaches at one time?
I did. Yeah, I put out something, and I did like a Zoom seminar. I'm gonna do another one. I'm gonna put together a workshop, a free workshop that I'm probably gonna do monthly, probably be 2 hours long. It'll be on Zoom, and it'll just be all this stuff that we're talking about.
Yeah.
So, people can
Incredibly
access
important.
it and understand it.
Yeah, so we'll definitely advocate through the groups. I'll help you the next time. I think you might have just put something out there, I don't know if you did it in a private coach group or if you did it in the,
Both.
okay, you
I,
did it in both.
I
Okay,
did it in both groups.
good, good.
Yeah, there was some interest. I don't know if everybody actually saw it.
Right, right. Yeah, it's whoever happens along it before it goes off their
Yeah,
timeline. But if we
yeah,
coordinate it in advance, we can get it out into an email and
yeah,
send that out. I would.
yeah. I will announce a time and date, for the first workshop,
Right,
and I'll
right.
put it out into different sources, into different groups. I also work with Healing Strong.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. We do too. Yep.
yeah. I work with a couple of the Healing Strong coaches.
Yeah, and
And
they've been coming over and taking our coaching
yeah,
uh,
yeah.
course as well.
There's
So
a lot to be learned. We didn't even touch on stress,
we'll
and all that
have to
stuff.
do we'll have to do another hour for that one.
Yeah, yeah, because it's big, and I
Yeah,
accept it and believe it. That's 30% of it.
yeah.
You've got to ratchet down the stress as much
Right.
as possible,
Now, what
because
is that? Because of the cortisol?
cortisol maybe, but probably more adrenaline.
Mm,
Adrenaline's like been
adrenal
identified as
fatigue. Yeah.
a tumor growth accelerator.
Mm,
So I guess it's just a bunch of different like downstream effects of emotional stress,
yeah. Yeah.
which comes from all these external factors, financial,
Sure. Yeah.
relationship, and everything else.
Yeah.
Just
When we
dealing,
mentioned
just
that, people thought we were cuckoo.
yeah, just dealing with life-threatening condition. By the way, this I didn't get to state this, and it's really important. So I come from a place where I say that cancer is not a disease, it's not an illness, and it's not a sickness. And that's where I kind of separate myself out from, the things that Susan talks a lot about.
Right.
I don't accept that a cancer patient is necessarily sick, because I would deal with plenty of them that are perfectly healthy individuals in every respect. They just happen to have a population of cells in their body that are malignant. Right? So cancer is not a disease in the normal sense of a disease. It's not an illness. It's not a failure of the immune system. And the person's typically usually not sick unless they've been doing conventional therapy, chemotherapy and radiation, lots of surgeries and stuff. Yeah, they're sick. But they usually will come to me, if they come to me prior to all that stuff, they're not a sick person at all. They're actually rather healthy. So I don't have to get them healthier or anything.
Right.
They're as healthy as they're going to be. We just have to focus on getting rid of these cancer cells and slowing down the train.
Right.
So cancer is an environmental injury. So there's a bunch of things in the environment that can trigger it. Toxic chemicals, pesticides. I have a whole website on antibiotics and cancer. It's called antibioticwatchdog.com. I have a free ebook on there you can read. And I'm finding more and more and more patients, especially with breast cancer. I'd say 30 to 40% of my breast cancer patients, I survey them. I said, did you take tetracycline for acne as a teenager? I said, yep. Okay, well, we know exactly what triggered your breast cancer.
Right.
It was taking those antibiotic prescriptions. And the data is all there. There's a study that shows 120% increased risk of breast cancer in women who used tetracycline.
It's incredible.
There's a big study from Finland, published in 2008. It shows elevated cancer risk for all different kinds of cancer, especially like leukemia, from only like 6 antibiotic prescriptions. There's a definite cause-effect relationship
and they're prescribed like candy.
And I can see it because mitochondria are essentially bacteria. They evolved from bacteria. When you look at them structurally and in every other way, they are essentially bacteria that live within our cells. You're going to take an antibiotics, yeah, you're going to kill the bacteria in your gut. We know that. But you're also going to create collateral damage. You're going to kill or damage the DNA in the mitochondria. That's exactly what cancer is. Now, cancer doesn't originate in any kind of a cell. It originates in stem cells. So if you damage the mitochondria and stem cells, that's the origin. This is where it begins. So we know that cancer can take 25 to 50 years to show up from when it was first initiated. It's typical, like for breast cancer, 25 years between the time it began to the time it was detected. So all it takes is damage to one cell, one single cell. And you go through that mathematically, it divides again, and then it becomes, a pea-sized, tumor that might show up on a mammogram, 25 years later. That's all that's going on. Right? There's nothing to do with anything else.
Yep.
Stress does not cause cancer. It can certainly promote it. It can make it show up faster. A poor diet doesn't cause, well, it can cause colon cancer and pancreatic cancer and maybe stomach cancers, esophageal, a few of the GI tract cancers. But generally diet doesn't cause cancer, but it can, except for those cancers, but it can promote it. It can make it appear faster. Or diet can slow it down.
Sorry about that.
So I think we'll leave it at that for now.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Okay.
That's very informative for me, and I can't wait to get this out there. And I'll make sure that all your links to your sites and everything get in the show notes, and
sure.
And I'll let you review everything before it's posted.
Okay. Now, so it's nutritionaloncology.net, which is the main website for Nori. Yeah. And there's Nori Nutraceuticals. That's an online store for supplements and nutraceutical products. And it also offers CBD products, noricbd.com. And there's antibioticwatchdog.com. And then I have another website that I'm working on. I don't know when it's all going to totally be put together, but it's like integrative oncology, sort of related, where I'm trying to bring in a bunch of practitioners all together, like a directory of doctors and nutritionists, other people, kind of just a resource to connect with people that have been trained and understand the Nori protocol.
Right. People that have been educated in your protocol.
Yeah.
Well, we're free. We're a nonprofit.
Yep.
That's what we do. We just want to get the information out there, and we keep building our platform so people can learn about people like you.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's exactly what we do.
And I'm continually doing more and more research, through experience and more study, learning how to make this protocol better, simpler, stronger. I'm always trying to simplify it. I always believe in less is more. Focus in on the problem at hand, address it in the simplest manner.
And I'm sure it helps with compliance as well.
Yeah.
The more simple it is, the more people are apt to do it.
Yeah, and I think the direction it's going to go in is that this cocktail, the nutraceutical cocktail is going to become so powerful at some point. We won't need to do methionine restriction. In other words, just low-fat plant-based diet, easy to do, good enough. Just rely on these nutraceuticals, that's it.
Right.
That's that direction. And the other direction is, once we figure out how to sequester methionine completely from the diet, then that could be a standalone treatment by itself without any nutraceuticals.
Yeah.
So there's opportunities.
Yeah, it's very interesting that you're when you're talking about therapeutic dose is so low that it doesn't approach a toxicity with these nutraceuticals that you're talking about.
Right.
Yeah, that's
Right.
I think that's very interesting. So you could take them at a therapeutic dose and not worry about the toxicity.
Yeah, I mean, they've been studied in cell culture. You know, they expose malignant cells, you know, to these compounds. You see what they do at those concentrations, but you also expose normal cells, and you see that it has zero effect on them, on their viability. And then you can see the same thing when you go to the animal studies. You see the same thing. You know, there's no, you see the tumors, you know, regressing in the animal, but you'll see no toxicity in the animal. You know, they biopsy all the organs and everything, and they, you know, look at all the blood work, and, you know, nothing, zero.
Yeah, incredible.
Yeah.
You'd think it would be front page news.
It's interesting. Do you remember when DCA sort of became popular?
No.
Dichloroacetate.
Okay.
That sort of got into the news, you know, that discovery.
Right.
There've been many discoveries bigger than that have just, they've never made it into the media.
Yeah, it's a shame.
And we know why.
Yeah, sure. Well, we'll have to talk more. I mean, I didn't talk much because I wanted you to do all, you know.
No, I kind of
get out everything that you wanted to get out. No, it's perfect. It's fine.
All
it's
right.
fine. Yep. And I'll get everything back to you before it goes up for you to take a look over and and
all right,
go from there. But thank you very much.
Great. Thanks a lot.
Okay, I'll talk to you.
Have a great week.
You too.
Okay.
Bye now.
Bye.